Okay, so this is kind of it's a tutorial kind of. It's more about working with templates that you might download on the internet, and I'm just using a brochure, like a standard kind of trifold brochure design and this is just a template that I found on Envato Elements. This is essentially a study of how to do everything almost completely wrong. This is a terrible template. This is not the right way to really to build anything. It's pushing it in terms of what you're doing in Adobe InDesign, and it looks pretty decent, right? But it isn't playing to InDesign's strengths very well. It's really not aligning things properly in boxes. It's very, very hard to work with. It's like the type is all separate from its background graphics, so they don't. You can do stuff like this, but there's no reason to. Like, you can actually do those elements in InDesign. These more graphic elements, you're going to want to do those in Adobe Illustrator, not Adobe InDesign. But they've kind of made all these gradient fills and stuff like that. And InDesign just doesn't give you nearly as flexible tools. So, I mean, if you're going to be doing a mix of graphics and type, it's okay to rough out your file like this, but for true production ready layout, you would not, you don't want to really be working like this. This is quite challenging here. As well, they've kind of done something silly. They've included trim marks in their graphics outside of the bleed area, or what's referred to as the slug area, which is basically anything outside of the bleed trim area. It's just called slug. You can define that, but it's just for extra info that's there for people who are actually working with the file. So we don't need to actually show trim files because that's part of our export options when we finally go to our press ready PDF file. So we don't need to include that here. As well, I mean, it's kind of weird how they've done this. Let's just see what these links are. It's not a link, it's like a group of circles and things. I mean, yes, you can draw these things in InDesign, but InDesign is a limited drawing tool. I really would not recommend doing anything graphic in InDesign. We have the Creative Suite for a reason. Illustrator is what we want for our background graphics. All we really want to do in InDesign is our type. So what's my problem with how they've done this type? I'm going to ungroup it. This is fine. These are logical blocks of type, but again, there's no reason to be putting contact us over this kind of group block. We can actually make this block that green color, that teal. As well, I think if I look through the color swatches, nothing's been defined properly. It's all just a big mess of all these colors. I have no idea how to use this palette. It is an absolute disaster of crap. That is a terrible color palette because it's just so hard to work with, and there's all kinds of extra colors in here that I don't even know if they're even used. They're not. So what are they doing in here? This is something that's shipped with a so-called professionally built template. It's awful. It's a mix of probably unstandard CMYK, no color bridge in sight. Got a random mix of RGB and CMYK. From a color control perspective, this is just broken. It's totally built 100% wrong. But as a rough kind of sketch, yeah, okay, it's about right. So what they've done here is they've broken this down into just a regular single panel sheet. But the thing is you don't really, you can do that. You can just take an 8.5 by 11, or in this case, I believe it's probably an A4 sheet, and then you want to divide it into your 3 panels. And they've done the outside panels. So this is the cover. You can kind of imagine it being folded here, another fold here, and then another fold here for the back cover. So this is basically what we refer to as the outside on a standard trifold. And then this is the inside. So when you open it up, this is what's on the back side of this panel, this is the middle panel, and this is the right-hand panel. How do you build that correctly? I mean, it's kind of ironic that they put in the pointless crop marks, but they forgot the very important fold marks, which you actually do need to draw in Adobe InDesign. So I'm kind of going to look at this template as being broken to the point of useless, but I'm going to try, what I'm going to do as my demo is I'm going to rebuild this template correctly. It's there's a way to do this. And this isn't it. This is a really bad template. It is totally misleading you in terms of how to get your colors. It's kind of got this nice teal color that then goes to this real kind of muddy gray. I don't think that that's a very well selected color. So I think I could work on that using an HSV model. And I think I would plan those things out. Again, gradients and fades, you're going to get much better results if you do that in Adobe Illustrator and then place that. Pretty much all I would do here, the only elements that I would do in Adobe InDesign would be these little blocks are service. And again, I would do them totally differently. And that's it. Everything else I would do in Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, including this little logo here. So how do I go about doing that? Well, first thing, of course, is open up Adobe Illustrator, which I have open. And just close the files that I have right now. Those are all open. Pause that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get an InDesign file that's set up reasonably to just kind of start fresh, to rebuild this same look, but in a way that's much more workable and ultimately going to just print properly. So I'm going to change my sizing a little bit. I'm going to be doing an 8.5 by 11 trifold. Okay, which is in picas. It's 11 inches wide, 8.5 inches tall, so that's a letter, which is common for North American print shops. We're not going to check facing pages because this is a single page, so each page is a side of the paper, so it's not facing pages. I'm going to set all my margins and stuff up later, just really, really basic, okay? And I'm not even going to bother with that. No slug. Don't need slug. There we go. 1/4 inch, I'm just going to call it 0.2 because I like to go with the 10 base. I think that's all I need. All right, so there's our real basic. So let's go edit preferences, just change my grid. Okay, so like I was saying, you can sort of, sorry, I'll keep that dock there. Actually, let's just get rid of all the default colors. All right, there we go. Now we're kind of clean and ready to go. So we've got 11 columns and 8.5 rows. So that's fine. First thing I probably want to do is just plan out my fold areas, right? So a lot of print shops, they might have templates for you, but most of the time they do not. They kind of expect you to give them an 8.5 by 11 trifold that they can work with. So the easiest way, you just think about this, is just, it's exactly 3 columns. If you were to divide your page into 3 columns, let's just drag a type object box from 0 to 11. And then we text frame option it, 3 columns with 3 columns with 0 gutter. Okay. If they're all exactly the same, they would work out right there. It's kind of faint, might not show up super well in the recording, but there's where it is. But the thing is, we actually don't want our cover panel to be the same size as our middle panel and our back one. We actually want the cover and the back to be about 1/8 of an inch bigger. That's just to give it more room to fold. So we have a 1/10 grid here. You know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it right there, because you can define where the fold marks are, and I'll show you how we're going to do that in the bleed area. So I'm just going to drag a guide so that it snaps on my column. I just used the text frame column just to, so I didn't have to measure it. I'm going to put that one in right there. Okay, so now I'm just going to delete my text column, because all I was using it for was just to find those places without having to do the math. So that's where I'm going to call my trim size. Okay, so let's get our trim marks in the bleed area. So this is where we use our color swatches, and that's what this registration color is here for. It's for things like defining fold marks. Basically, that's pretty much all it's used for. There's other things you can use it for, like registration crosshairs and whatever. But if you need to draw in an element that is not part of the design, but is for something like indicating folds, which we need to do, we select registration. Then take our pen tool or our line tool, and we go and we zoom in a little so that it snaps properly. And it's going to be entirely outside of the bleed, and we're going to make it 1 point, and then we're going to change it to dashed, which indicates fold. And printers will know to interpret that as a fold line because it is using the registration color. So we just put that right on our guide. And of course, we want it to actually snap in the middle, which you got to zoom in real close to do. Copy, put it down on the bottom, paste. Oh. Kind of want to lock my guides at this point as well so I don't accidentally drag and move them. So, view, guides, lock guides. Let's move each one of these independently here. Like I say, if I'm not zoomed in close enough and I try and rely on InDesign to snap that into place, it works 50% of the time, but you always got to go and check. Because see, it tends to snap it on the outside. We want it in the middle of the strokes. You do have to log in. You've got to zoom in pretty close to make sure that that has snapped correctly. Okay. So there we go. That's our template, right? Now we could make that part of our master style in our pages so that we don't have to do that on the other side, on the inside layout, because we want to use the same, we can use the same master style. So let's just go to our pages, you know, master A. I'm going to just copy and paste these things. So unlock my guides. So I'm just going to go Control X to cut those off of my main, and I'm going to go into my double click into my master style guide, and I'm going to go edit paste in place. So that puts those exactly in the same relative to the origin 00. It's going to line up right in there. And my guides, I don't want them here either, but I do want them in my master style, so paste in place. There we go. And because part of the master styles are going to be locked automatically, so that makes it nice and easy to start with. Okay, so that's my basic 8.5 by 11 brochure template. So now I go inside spread, outside spread. So what's my next step? Probably to define a margin. So I think I'm going to keep it consistent. So I'm just going to define my margin right here in my master style guide, edit, layout, margins, and columns. And I'm pretty sure I don't need a real big margin on 8.5 by 11 brochure. I'm going to make it 0.3 all the way around. That looks about right to me. So again, is there a margin on the inside? If you wanted to get in and decide this with columns, then the answer would be yes. But if we're looking at this style, not really. They are sort of using a margin here. It does look like it's roughly a 0.3 margin, although they've defined a margin that's, let's go take a look. Yeah, they've done this in millimeters because it's sort of using A4, but they haven't defined it in there. It must be in the master style. No, they haven't. I don't know. Again, not really setting it up the way that I would. Anyways, I'm changing my margin size because what I see is this spacing here. That to me is more like the margin that I'm concerned with. They've included a margin, but they're ignoring it, kind of. So, I don't know what. Oh no, they've set their margin at 0. That's what they've done. So they just haven't even used margins correctly in this document. So what do I want to do next? I think I'm going to want to get these colors. I want to find Pantone bridge equivalents for these. So let's just find the thing that has the colors in it, which is these. So I'm going to copy over to my new template, paste, put it in place roughly. Kind of lines up, not really because A4 is quite a different format, but that's okay. I'm going to ungroup these. I put this into my master style, by the way, which I'm not going to do that, but let's see if it carried over any swatches. It did. So CM, so 469Y31 0. So something close to that in Pantone Connect is what I really want to look for. And in this type of a case, we would be doing Pantone Color Bridge coated almost certainly, because it's pretty rare to do a Trifold Brochure uncoated. So that looks pretty close to me. 709, good enough. Now I want a teal color. That looks pretty close. I mean, I could obviously get into the numbers and search, but I'm just eyeballing it. I'm still kind of getting used to using this, so add color to swatches. There we go. Properly defines Pantone colors that now I can use between Adobe Illustrator and here to get some consistency between things. So these colors can go. Okay. I'm just going to delete them out of my master style. I don't need them. Oh, it's just white. Okay. So I've got my colors. Maybe there's a couple more. I think there was like sort of a gray, but I think I can work. I think instead of a gray, I'm going to go and spec out a nice dark. I don't like how that gray goes to that teal. That's kind of ugly. I'm going to spec out just a desaturated color. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to duplicate the swatch. It's just asking me, do you want to duplicate that exact spot definition? The answer is yes, because I'm going to modify it. And I'm going to change the color mode to, I want to use HSB, hue, saturation, and balance, to darken this color up. So I just want to take the brightness down. I don't want to desaturate it or anything. I just want to take that brightness down, so down to 52%. Now let's go back and see how that looks in CMYK. Pretty good. It's not rational, but we'll change that. We'll go 91, 48, 35, and 10. And I guess I probably should go look for a Pantone color, but I don't really need to. All I'm doing is just designing a swatch, but I want to be able to get it over to Adobe Illustrator so it's consistent. So dark teal is fine. I could go look up a Pantone color if I wanted to, but all I'm really doing is just replacing that gray with a dark desaturated version of the teal, which I think is just going to blend more nicely. And I think this kind of pink color, they've kind of used that just as a flat color, so that's fair enough. So all right. Okay, so I'm just going to Control Z just to undo my hacking apart of their stuff. Okay, so my next trick here is, oh, there's actually a light. I think I'm just going to do that with tints. We'll see. We'll see how that works. But they've kind of got these pill shapes, circle shapes, all the rest of it. So, you know, when you're putting together your graphics, it's important then to know in Adobe Illustrator what you're going to do with these things. And the reason I don't like that they've built this all in InDesign is it's very inflexible. I can't reuse this kind of pill and circle shape all that easily. I'm limited to how they've cropped it only. Whereas if I just did that as an Adobe Illustrator shape, I've got more flexibility. Same with this kind of little S-curve thing and whatever. So I'm just going to go over to Adobe Illustrator now, and I'm going to just make an artboard that matches my brochure layout. palettes are a mess. Do some cleanup and just get rid of all this stuff that I'm not using. I'm basically not using any of these things. I just want my appearance. Of course, I want my color swatches. Well, that's why everything feels like it's a mess. Monitor switching. Okay. Actually, here's a handy thing. Window, Actions, delete all unused panel items. That's a pre-written script that just goes through and cleans up all the useless crap that Illustrator gives you by default. Kind of funny that you would notice that there is a script written for that. If they know that that's a problem, why don't they just not put all that crap in your file to start with? That would be nice, but they don't, so that action is there. Okay, so this is pretty much all I need. So now I want to get those Pantone colors over, but first I want to make sure I'm not working in RGB preview, I'm working in CMYK. So document color mode, which is under where? Edit. Where's my document color mode? I can never remember where this is. There it is, right under File. I always forget. Okay, File, CMYK for print. All right, so InDesign, let's go back to my fresh template. I'm just going to make 3 blocks just so I can cut and paste them. And the whole reason is just to get these Pantone, these spot color definitions with the exact values to easily be in Adobe Illustrator. This is the quickest and easiest way to do it. Cut and paste. There you go. Proper matched CMYK shapes for that. Okay, so I've got my colors, got my artboard to work with. Let's go and see what we're going to start with first to duplicate from the template. We're going to have this big fade from light teal to my new desaturated dark teal. Okay. It's roughly, I mean, you can build gradients in InDesign, you can, but you can't blend them nicely. That's the problem. It doesn't allow you to stack up multiple fills, but Adobe Illustrator does, so it's going to do a better job. Let's see, am I using that gradient more than 2/3 of the layout anywhere? I'm not. So first thing I'm going to do in Illustrator is just build myself a graphic that has that gradient that I can import and use in InDesign. I want to also include some bleed, but it doesn't really matter because I can scale it up, so it's literally just a block. With
question.
Yes. Okay, so let's go back and build that gradient. So this is just going to be a graphic, and I'm going to use this as a bit of a demo to sort of show how Illustrator and InDesign kind of deal with things a little differently when it comes to how they blend gradients and stuff like that. So I've got my appearance palette open. And, you know, if you've watched some of my other working with color tutorial videos, you know, if you don't look at your appearance palette, you might assume that you can only apply one fill to a shape in Illustrator, but you can actually stack up multiple shapes. And this helps us build nicer looking gradients that actually do even print better when you're using spot colors as a way to manage your color palette. Even if we're going to convert to CMYK, this will print out better than just doing a straight gradient. So I'm going to bring up my gradient window, which I do have open somewhere. I just can't find it on all my screens. It's in there somewhere. There it is. Okay, so my basic default black and white, but let's go from dark teal to that light teal. So if you were to just use the default single gradient to go from one color to another, it's not bad, but what Illustrator does is it puts this kind of gray area, which is, it's literally mimicking the way two spot colors would gradate. You'd put down the one that goes from 100% to 0%, and the other one goes from 100% to 0%. So somewhere in the middle is roughly a 50-50 blend of these two colors. But the problem is Illustrator's actually rendering it in CMYK preview mode, but it also actually outputs the ink that way. So you get a more of a gray-ish blend in here, which isn't ideal. So how do you fix that? It's quite easy. You just blend from 100% of the exact same spot color, but set the 0 as the opacity. Okay, so that's going to blend that dark color. I'm going to save that gradient type. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new solid fill underneath that, which is going to be my lighter gradient. And that gives us a really nice, clean, pure blend that I can actually import and use in Adobe InDesign. Now if I were to cut and paste this graphic, this object, copy, and then just go over to InDesign and just paste it, it's going to bring it in, but it isn't going to render that color using the spots correctly. It's going to reinterpret that. It's essentially made its own version of it, and InDesign doesn't allow you to stack up, so it's reintroduced that kind of gray mud. So we don't want to link stuff that graphics that we've done in Adobe Illustrator that way. What we want to do is we want to save this. Okay, I'm going to save this Adobe Illustrator file to my VCAD working file. Okay, so this is where I'm just going to make a graphics folder. Okay, and I'm just going to call this background graphics. Just an AI file, it's fine. I want to start naming my artboards because I'm going to have separate elements built out over multiple artboards here. So I'm going to bring up my artboards window, which is again strewn across some monitor somewhere. There it is. Way there. Dock that. Okay, so this is called artboard 1. I'm just going to rename this as teal gradient background. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this artboard now. Well, actually I don't think I am going to duplicate it because I'm probably going to have a different size. So I can, but anyways, I can now bring this in, so I'm going to save. I'm going to go over to InDesign now, and I'm going to bring that background in on the cover. So Control D to place. Okay, show import options. I'm not too worried about replace, but show import options, that is going to be important down the road, but that just lets me preview which artboard to bring in. So I'm going to say, this is the only one right now, hit OK, blink it down. There we go. Okay, so this hasn't now replaced anything in my spots. The CMYK values are all going to match because I sampled them from here. But this is also scalable, rotatable, croppable, whatever. So roughly within our template, there we go. That's what I'm going to use it there for on page 2, and I might use it up here as well. It's a little bit in there, but it's just a flexible thing that I can scale. It's going to come out nicely. Just it's going to look better. So that's the right way to build that sort of a thing that's going to just print nicer and looks better in general. So that's that element, which I can reuse. My next element then is this kind of pill shape thing. So let's build that as a graphic. But we're going to do it in Adobe Illustrator instead. So I'll just start with I'll just keep the artboards the same size, whatever. The nice thing, we don't need to worry too much about sizing because Illustrator elements are scalable in InDesign. They're not going to pixelate. We can make them bigger, smaller, as we like. Okay, so all it really is a rectangle with rounded corners, really rounded corners. So let's just drag a rectangle and just, there you go, sound effects for free. Like what color was it? I think it was filled with the same kind of gradient thing. Excuse me, let me go and, yeah, so yeah, it goes from vertical across, okay. You don't have to organize them like this. I just like to keep my fills kind of grouped together like that. I think it had a pretty thick white stroke around it too, didn't it? So let's go and make that paper, make it real thick. Maybe about like that roughly. Let's call it 50. Yep. I think the corners might even have been more rounded. I think there almost is no straight shape. It's sort of just like a pill, so round like that. There we go. So there's that, and then the fill was angled because they're using it on an angle. So but they kind of had the gradient straight up and down. So let's do that. And then what else did we have? We had this little circle dot thing. It isn't used there, but it is used there. Do I want part of this graphic or a separate one? I think I'm going to make it a separate graphic so that I've got some flexibility to move it around. You know what? No, I'm not. I'm just going to do that right in Illustrator. So it's a circle that has the same fill attributes as this. I don't think the stroke is nearly that thick though. Put that down to 25. I want to align that on the path like that. I think it's not quite that big either. It kind of sits on the middle of the path, so that would tell me that what I should do instead is align this stroke to the middle of the path versus on the inside, which is how it is right now. So let's go to our stroke properties and, oh no, it actually is on them. So let me just put a background in place here because it's a lot thicker. That's the thing, I just made it too thick. Keep that the same. There you go. And I want the light teal added to fill, so add new fill. Okay, so this element is now kind of done and ready to go. The artboard here does not need to be this big. If this is a scalable element, but we don't want to be messing around with an artboard that's real big, because that's going to be the sizing handles when we import this into InDesign. So we're just going to resize the artboard to work roughly with this graphic. It doesn't need to be a perfect fit, but it should be something closer like this. Kind of hard to see because I've got white, but I know that that's not going outside of my artboard. So that's my second artboard, so we'll name this one. Which artboard is that? Seem to have accidentally duplicated an artboard here. Let's just delete this one. There's that done. So I've added that to my Adobe Illustrator file on new artboard. So if I go back to InDesign, it's going to prompt me that this has been updated, but that's fine. Just click the little warning symbol and that updates the graphic. But it says it's updated because I've added a new artboard to it. So let's place that artboard 2, same thing. But now I've got the option to choose page 2. There's that. So this is now workable in InDesign. I can angle it and do all that kind of stuff, but I can reuse it. That's the key thing. So we've got those two elements, which we're going to put together. I've got this kind of pink background, a little bit of angled thing. I've got this circle element, and then we've got this kind of gray dot. Okay, and then we've got these stripy things, which I don't know, it's 50-50 as to whether or not I want to do that in InDesign. I think it's just easier to do it in Illustrator, honestly, because it's used twice. Okay, I'm just going to make this, I don't know, orbital circle thing. Next, excuse me. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a square artboard for this because it's a square thing. Edit that after, double click. Gonna just make it, it doesn't need to be that big. Let's 5 by 5 is fine. Okay, so we're going to start with circles and we're going to go up from the center of our artboard, and I'm going to, just so I can see it, I'm going to draw with teal. Okay, There's one, and I think there was another kind of concentric circle inside. I'm just holding down Alt and Shift to draw a circle from the center with the center tool. If you don't hold down Alt and Shift, it creates ovals and stuff that drag down from the left to the right. But if you hold down Alt Shift, that draws a constrained circle from the center. So there's my kind of two little orbits, and then, I don't know, look pretty arbitrary to me. Teal, white, teal, teal. So there's 3 on the inside, 1, 2 on the outside. I mean, it's just kind of an abstract thing, but since I'm trying to follow it, let's stick with the program. So do that one, flip, and okay, and then these are going to be the white ones. All right, so there's those shapes. So now we want to make all these guys filled with white. And we want these circles to be stroked with white. Those are green, no strokes on them. Good to go, or teal, I guess. I'll save. So that's that second artboard. I'm just going to call this orbit circles. It doesn't really matter what you call them. I just like to name them something so when I'm importing them, I know what artboard to select on my import options. Okay, so there's that graphic done, and then there was basically this circle on its own but filled with a gray in the InDesign. So that's actually maybe a color that I need to add to my palette, is this kind of cool gray. So I'll do that now, actually. Let's go over to Pantone Connect, look for a cool gray. That looks like a pretty nice tonal cool gray right there, actually. I'm gonna call that good. Like it just tones in a little nicer in my books. We can always tint our colors as well, remember? So if we want it lighter, we just tint it. So Control X to cut it, go over to Illustrator, colors available. Let's make our circle, which again is going to be another, it can be smaller. I'm just going to grab this circle just for the sake of it, and I'm going to just fill it with our gray color and delete the fill. So there we go, it's got the stroke around it. I kind of want to align this so it's in the middle of my artboard, so align to artboard, center, center. There you go, that dot's in there. But I mean, it's kind of arbitrary as to how big that is. It's just, if we go back to the template here, that I'm recreating, you know, it looks to me like that stroke just is scaled up from there. So I can just scale the artboard graphic in InDesign if I like, or I can scale it here. 6 1/2 dozen the other, really. That stroke looks pretty thick to me though. There we go. It's probably gonna be better. Okay, save. Let's get that element onto our layout board in InDesign. It goes on the back side. Let's give ourselves a second page now while we're at it. Oh, I've been working in the master style. That's not what I want to be doing. First off, let's cut those out of the master guide, be actually on the page that we want. Control D to place. So I've got my orbit thing. It's not going to show much, but I can give it a background so we can see it. And then background graphics again, this thing right there. So I think that's pretty much all my color elements, color graphic elements. Let's just look a little more carefully. Now, there was a stripy thing, and then this sort of, oh, there's actually a darker version of the salmon color in here, I see. Let's actually ungroup that. So one thing, if I did want to get this exact shape, but really it's just a scaled up version of this been cut out, but I can cut and paste this into Illustrator and use it as a vector, but I don't think I'm going to need to. All I really care about is the color, which is 1070-32. Okay. It's really just a slightly darker desaturated version of this Pantone color. So I'm just going to go add that to my Pantone swatch. Same process, duplicate it. Switch over to HSB in the mixer. And knock the brightness back. Okay, so I'm going to want that color in my InDesign document too. So quick and easy way is just copy and paste. So that should be in my swatch palette now. And I think if I look at that, how that curve is, it's just a duplicate of this shape, but just in the pink and just crop there, right? So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this artboard. So what I did there is artboard, hold down the Alt key when you select it. So you click it to select the artboard, hold down Alt, which brings up this duplicate, click and drag, let go of Alt, that duplicates it. That works for duplicating with the direct selection too on graphics and things like that. Kind of handy. So let's clear this up, let's delete this circle, let's get rid of this stroke. And let's fill it with this color. Okay, I guess we got our kind of angled 45-degree stripes. Let's build that graphic element too, so that we can mess around with that in our layout. So all I'm going to do here is just a very quick way of doing this is just draw a line at 45 degrees like this. It doesn't matter what the color is, I'm just going to use this dark pink color. I think I'm going to bump that up to like 100 point. If I'm being real lazy, I'm going to do a blend object, blend options. I'm going to use specified steps 4. Yeah, I think there's 4. That actually looks a little too many now that I think about it. Let's go back and change that to 3. I think that looks closer to what they were doing. All I wanted is something that's just kind of scalable, but I mean, I could crop this out if I wanted to, but really we're just going to be constraining to the artboard. So I'm just going to move the artboard a little bit so that I've got room, and just going to scale these up so they all go outside of the artboard. I mean, I could leave it like this. The perfectionist in me does not like leaving stuff kind of sloppy like that. But, you know, it does give me more flexibility if I wanted those ends, but I don't. I mean, if I go back to the reference, it's just this. It just crops. So I don't know. And I've actually spaced it quite a bit more tightly than they have here, haven't I? They've actually done equal. Yeah, all right. Haven't quite done this right. Let's change my blend options to even less. I'm just going to do 2. Let's hit tab to see what that, yeah, that looks pretty even. That's good enough. Okay, so, you know, they are tinting it in white, and then they're also tinting it in that kind of blue, like this, or this sort of gray color. So I'm going to make 2 copies of this now. So the first thing I'm going to do is just apply white to the stroke. I'm not going to be able to see it here, but duplicate this down there and change it to that color. Again, we can always tint this or use transparency because we're converting to CMYK, so we're okay to do any of that sort of stuff in InDesign. So I think that that's fine. I'm going to call that stripes white, stripes 2206. It's kind of arbitrary. That's just what the number happened to be. So I think that's all I need. I don't think I need any more graphic elements. Got my circles. Maybe I got that light teal. Circle, circle, circle. Now, these things here, how have they made these things? Let's ungroup them. Yeah, they've made these vectors right in InDesign. Yeah, do not do that. We're going to make these, we're going to take these over to Illustrator, where they belong. I mean, you can use InDesign to do this, but just don't. Okay, we don't need the circle, we just need these little things. So I'm going to group that. I mean, these were initially done in Illustrator, I'm pretty sure. This does not look like graphics done in InDesign. So that one's good. Okay, copy those over to Illustrator. We're going to put these on their own artboards in a minute. I think there's some other icons in here to fix up. Yep, phone. I mean, QR code. I guess that's kind of cute. Maybe use that if we want to, but let's ungroup these. Copy those over to Adobe Illustrator. There we go. So we've got all of our little white knockout icons, which is great. So like I was saying, we are going to put each of these icons on their own little artboard, just so that we can import them independently and separately, which is what we really want to be doing. But this can be a really small little artboard, but we want them all to be consistent in size. That's what really matters. So it's going to be about, let's just call them 1. I mean, that's too big. We'll do 1/2 inch. Okay. Yeah. So sometimes what you do is you get these kind of, when you copy and paste things from InDesign, you get these bounding boxes that are invisible. So don't be afraid to ungroup things. All right, so just scaling them up to fit the artboard. I got Snap to Pixel or something turned on. I do. Let's turn off Snap to Pixel. So line to artboard, center, center. And we're just going to do that a couple times over. I'm just going to duplicate these artboards and then delete the little ambulance off of it. I mean, this might be better to do in outline mode just because we can see everything that we're working with. Let's duplicate this artboard first a 3rd time. We've got 6 icons, so that's what we need.
Tobias, when is this brochure due?
Okay, so I'm continuing on here, just getting my icons all equally sized and spaced, like oriented on the artboard. Okay, so the only one that's not quite perfectly done here is this little ambulance. And I don't know, this is just me with Adobe Illustrator. Once this, like, I don't like shapes like that because you can't tint them and stuff properly. So this is, I'm just going to go clean that up by using the Unite tool on these. There we go. Now they're nice, clean, unified graphics. This one here is like overscaled it just a touch outside. I mean, these don't have to fit the artboard exactly. Just want to be mostly fitting. But yeah, we don't want to go outside of the artboard like that because that's going to get cropped off. I mean, that's using the snapping, but it looks like it's still a little bit outside, so I'm just going to scale it down just a little. There we go. Probably the same issue here. Just going to hold down the Alt-Shift keys to scale from the center. There we go. Those all fit pretty well. Good enough. So now let's name these so I know what they are. So we just double click on it, takes you right to it. Click on Beaker. I always kind of wonder when that phone symbol is no longer actually going to be meaningful as a phone symbol. Probably with our kids' generation, will be like, what the heck is that weird thing? Phones look like a little tablet. Okay, so those artboards are all done. So I'm pretty sure now I've got everything in my graphics Illustrator file that I need to properly reproduce everything that's in here. I don't think I've seen anything else that I need. Pretty sufficiently hacked it all to bits, so I'm just going to close it, say no, because it's quicker, and I just want to now reopen it so that I can see what the sort of original intent was. I mean, the other thing that they do, it's a little confusing, is they sort of make it look like you could do a brochure in Adobe Illustrator, and technically you can. I would not recommend it. It's a little bit too much typography for Illustrator. InDesign is the right tool, and it's actually a combination of InDesign and Illustrator. But what they gave us in here, actually there's nothing in there, it's blank. Okay. Oh, that's just because it's InDesign. Let me go double check. I should actually look at what they provided. My handy dandy never works loading dynamic fonts from Adobe in the background, which will never work, but alright, so yep, those kind of layery things, these things, these things, these things. Let's go quickly take a look at what they put together for us in Adobe Illustrator. Yeah, looks like they built a template in Illustrator, and I'm going to bet that they built it wrong too. Yeah, no fold marks. Blend's all kind of messed up. Yeah, I mean, you could do this in Adobe Illustrator, but this is not the right way to set it up, even remotely. So I'm not going to... Oh, yeah, I need the healthcare logo. I did need that, so let's grab that. That's handy. Forgot about that. There's a hell of a tagline. Healthcare, because your health life matters. Thanks. As opposed to those other suckers who their life don't matter because they don't get this health care. There we go. So now we got our logo. Let's okay, save. So we have, 14 artboards here, but these are all different things that we can now link into InDesign just using that show options when you import. I mean, I've just been placing them here just to get the colors and stuff. Now I'm going to go through and I'm really just going to place them as I need them. But I'll just update them now. But they're all there. Okay. So my next step is I'm going to break it down panel by panel. So I'm going to do this first panel here, but I'm going to use my guide and I'm just going to start simple. I'm just going to fill it with this pink color. I'm just going to grab any old object that's at hand. Happens to be this one. Just going to duplicate that and put it off in the slug for later use. And you can already see it's filled with a Pantone color. I just have a graphic placed in it, but I'm going to delete the linked graphic. So there's that pink overlay. Okay, so I had just arbitrarily rotated this in the box, but from an alignment on a grid perspective, that's not cool. So we actually don't rotate the object, we rotate the content within it, which we can do right up here. So I can go -45. It's going to rotate that 45, but that allows me now to crop it within my object block. Which if we look back at our template example here, that's kind of what they've done. They sort of cropped it within the bleed and everything. So I'm going to take this over there. And I'm just going to scale this thing till it, or move it basically until it kind of does what I want it to do, which is roughly there. I mean, I'm not following it exactly, but pretty much like that. And then they got the circle dot thing over this. So right now, if I just hit scale this down, it's going to crop that thing. But I can also just have auto fit and fill, and then when I hold shift, it's going to scale that down with it, which is what I think I want for now, just so I can get it to the right size, which was kind of like this, I think. Sort of. White dot was down there. Let's rotate this thing. Maybe 45 will do it. Not quite. So what is rotating around right now is the orientation point here because it's the upper left corner. If I want to rotate around the middle, just do that. And then it spins like that. That's probably a better way to do it, right? Unfortunately, this is a little bit clickety. Let's see, maybe -45, kind of. There. Turn off auto fitting so that I don't rescale, because it's roughly where the size I want it. I feel like view snap to grid has been turned off. Okay, so this area is outside of the bleed, so I'm going to just crop this to the bleed. And get that sort of up there, which if I remember, is roughly what they've got. Yeah, kind of. Close enough. Okay, so let's get the healthcare. Actually, this feeling like it's a little big. I'm going to scale that down a little bit just so this goes in the middle. There we go. Let's put the logo over top of it. So Control D to place background graphic, show import options. It's going to be the last one, so I can skip right to the last page count or artboard. You can see a little preview there. Nice and simple. Pop that down. I mean, that looks a little small to me, but that is what the template had, so I wouldn't say that that's too bad. And because I've got grid snapping turned on, it should be on grid. It doesn't really matter. That type of placement we'll fiddle around with once we get our type and things put in. That's there. So the only thing is that you don't get quite as clean of a preview in display performance with your placed Illustrator, but if you want to see what it really looks like, just go to edit your quality and you get a pretty, well, you get a perfectly representative version. and I think right away this gradient blend actually looks better just because of the way the colors are put together. Okay, so I think I can start. I mean, I've got one more element, this thing, so let's place that in place now. Control D. I don't know which artboard it is, but I can just, there it is, 5. Okay, so I've just rotated that inside the object. Now I'm going to use the object to crop that graphic into the background here. Okay, now I might have picked a color there that's a little, this is not as high contrast, right? I picked something that's a little darker, I desaturated a little bit more. But because it's essentially the same color, and we are going to be targeting just CMYK output, and we're using color bridge values anyway as our base, I can do another type of tint. I could either just, I could just literally tint it if it was a fill, but I can adjust this, the transparency. That's effectively the same as tinting, just bringing through whatever is the color behind it. That's going to render just fine, even though when we're converting to CMYK we might get a warning. Pantone colors when converted spots give you unexpected results. That is if you're actually printing Pantone spot colors, but we're not. We know we're targeting CMYK, so if we want to just use transparency to blend that away, we can. I might pull that even more subtle down to like 25% because it was pretty subtle in their placement. So that is basically done. Background, color object, vector graphic 1, vector graphic 2, vector graphic 3, logo. Okay. At this point, this is where I'm going to say, okay, I want to be able to separate my layers. I'm going to be putting type over top. I don't want to be accidentally selecting all this stuff all the time. So making a layer just makes it really easy that I can just lock it out. So I'm just going to call it graphics. Okay. And type. Probably all I'm going to need in this particular layout. So now if I lock that, I can click around and I'm not accidentally moving things. So we're kind of good to go there. It looks like I accidentally moved my trim marks. Well, that's just because they're on the page. It should be part of my master style. Let's double check. I must have accidentally not copied those over to my master style. That's okay. I'll fix that later. It's in the bottom ones are there, so that's all I really need for now. Okay, so that's the first panel done. Let's get these styles in place. And we're going to be putting the phone in here and this text, but we're just going to get our 2 text styles down here. So these fonts are working. I don't think that there is a paragraph. No, there is. But it's got an override applied to it, and that's got an override applied to it. Yeah, okay. That's not what we want. So we want, we've basically got an H1, which is all caps, H2, which is title cap, pink and white. Okay, so this is our H1. Okay, so the easiest way for me to bring this in is just to Montserrat TT black 29 point. I don't want to copy it over because I don't want to copy over their messy styles. Those would come with them if I cut and paste here. So I'm just going to manually build out my H1 paragraph type. But while I'm at it, let's just define our basic paragraph as Open Sans regular 11. That makes sense to me. Okay, so that's our basic paragraph that we can base other things off. I'm going to also make an H1, which was Montserrat TT. Yeah, I should probably recommend using the OTF version, honestly. TrueType fonts are Type 1 fonts, and I believe InDesign is going to drop support for those fonts going forward. I'm not super sure about that, but I'm going to say it's probably black. Was it 17? We'll see. Okay, so on my type layer, I'm going to just kind of put these two styles together just to see how they're looking. So look at my layers organized, go up onto my type, block graphics, put a text block in starting somewhere roughly here. What was it they said? Your health is our priority. Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I had said was, this is all caps. And it's not coming out all caps. So we can force that in our paragraph styles. I believe it might be a character style thing. Forget. I forgot to turn off hyphenation in my basic paragraph style. Yeah, I think actually it's a character thing. I don't think I can set all caps in my paragraph style, which is actually a little bit strange now that I think about it. Let's just double check. Is that an open type? New. Yeah, I think I've kind of made it a little bit too small. That's the first thing I notice here, so let's just make it a little bigger. And the default leading here is much tighter. Like I know for sure they've gone lower on there. Probably about there. 30.29, let's go check. 29.32 point leading. There we go. So now character styles, right? So let's make something white all caps. So let's make a new character style. New character style, white all caps. Oh, maybe you can't even do it in a character style. That's annoying. Oh no, you can. Case. Okay. Case. All caps. Character color. Paper. That ought to do. There. Okay, so that works. We now have this body copy white. So let's just copy it. It's just lorem ipsum, but let's grab it anyway. Okay, so I'm copying it, but I don't want to paste it with the formatting, okay? I don't want to carry over their styles. I just want the text. So paste without formatting, okay? So when you right click, Control-Shift-V is paste without formatting. But what it's gonna happen is gonna put that lorem ipsum in my H1 because I didn't define my next style. So that's kind of a pain because I'm like, well, now I gotta. So instead of doing that, let's go and actually fix that in my paragraph style H1. In basic, first thing in general, we say next style is basic paragraph or you could say no paragraph style, but I want basic paragraph. Okay, so now when I go and I hit enter and then I paste in that type without formatting, it goes in as basic paragraph, but all caps because my character style is applied. So we're just going to turn that off. So the first thing I notice is that in my basic paragraph style, I forgot to turn off hyphenation. So we're going to go back and fix that. And then I'm going to want to be able to make this type white. So I'm going to want a basic character style called white. It's just purely to change the color. It doesn't alter anything else. It just goes to paper. Okay, so now I can apply that just plain white, and that changes that. All right. So, I mean, one of the things I sort of notice is I pretty much made this header graphic area too big. I went down too far. I need to move it up an inch by a row, but that's okay. That's easy to do because I've made these all separate graphics that I can move around and crop however I want. It makes life much, much easier than trying to do everything in InDesign, but I'm just going to get my type elements in place for now. So the next thing is to build this telephone number field with rounded corners. Okay, so I'm just going to do that with a text field. It's going to be its own text box. This doesn't need to be there. It's going to go up probably more like somewhere here. Actually, that fits. I think I'm good. Okay, so I'm just going to draw a text block. As well follow my margins. And I'm going to fill that with my basic paragraph. And it's a phone number, so it's a British style phone number. Good enough. Let's go copy it. Paste without formatting, just to get the numbers. Okay, and we'll make it white while we're at it. White. Okay, so we want to make this little pill shape, but we don't want to be layering stuff up. Okay, text frame options. First off, we're just going to align it in the center. Okay, we're now just going to align this in the center. Well, you know what? I'm not going to align that in the center. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Let's get our color in place. So we go to our swatches, pick our color. Okay, object corner options. We can choose rounded. We can link them all, and we can create our pill shape. Of course, this pill is a little bit tall, right? But that's okay. Scale it down. I think that looks about right. Kind of on margin there. I think that's fine. Okay, I mean, I might think that this could be a little bit bigger, but we want to make room for our placed telephone icon. And we actually just want this centered. But if I were, 6 1/2 dozen the other, you know what, doesn't matter. I can either text frame, I could do an inset text frame, but because I've added rounded corners, it's not going to allow me to only set the left. It's going to force it to be the same at this size. So I'm just going to quickly change this to just centered type. And I'm probably, because it's not going to be consistent anywhere else, it's fine to use an override here. So I think it should be a little bigger. Okay, so now I'm just going to go get my phone icon from my graphic. It's in here somewhere. There you go. So if I just stick that down at size, it's going to be a little on the biggish side, but it's not too bad. But I can scale that down. That looks about right to me. Okay, so this is now much easier to work with. I don't have to worry about keeping that graphic aligned. I can move it around. It's an independent little thing that I've just grouped, and it's easy to work with in my layout, as opposed to this, which is not easy to work with because it's all locked and everything, and it's very frustrating, like almost as if this was designed so that you can't edit it, which makes it a terrible template. But this is not a terrible template because you can totally work with this easily by changing out your type. So there we go. That bit of the cover is pretty much done. Okay, so now I'm just going to kind of work back through my panels here and get these all going. Okay, so my next style is the salmon pink, but it's H2 because it's not all caps. Body, 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 contact us, domain name, pretty simple. Okay, so here's a gradient. You know, if I was to do this layout, I would say, you know what, this big gradient can just sit as one big panel right across the top. I think that'll be much easier. That's what I made this thing for. So let's unlock our graphics layer. Pop this guy down and let's just scale him up. Right, that's what that is. Okay, none auto fit. Okay. Oh, we want to fill it. Okay, so that's just kind of sitting as a background. Now I can just put a white block over top of it, just to define my white area, which is like there. Like that's sort of the extent of graphics that you might draw in InDesign, really, is a white block, maybe a white circle, but that's about it. Otherwise, go to Illustrator, it's much better. Okay, so we get our dot, we get this. Let's put our big dot in there, put this corner up there. Let's get that done. Same graphic, just move it over there. I think they might have rotated it again. Oh, actually they changed it with some salmon dots. Yeah. Maybe I'll go back and fix that detail up, but for now it's just an arbitrary decorative item. It's not really important. This big dot thing. So, did I bring in my dot? Yep. Basically sits in the middle like that. Okay, next this text block. So now I got to bring in my stripey bits. And actually you can see how they got way overly complex with masking here to get that. That's just a nightmare. That's a real hard way to build that. You know, these teal, I forget, I'm pretty sure I had a white stripe. So let's go and import, Control D again. Yeah, those. So they're really big, but I can just tint those down maybe 10%. I'm just using cropping here for now. See how it scales. So all I did there is I just used the direct selection tool to click. You see the red kind of handles that. That means you're scaling that. So I sort of gave myself yeah, that looks about right. Yeah, looks like they kind of had those overlapping this circle element for whatever reason. So we can do that. This, click auto fit so it scales with it, and just drag it up. There we go. So that kind of worked. I mean, I sort of ended up with stripes that are a lot bigger than they had, but I think it's a pretty arbitrary background element anyway. I mean, I'm not even entirely sure they intended that. That could sort of happen when we're trying to do this stuff in InDesign. But anyway, that's good. So now we're going to bring in the other stripes for the background here. Oh, I forgot to select the object. That's fine. So, you know, in the design option here, there's just sort of these 3 stripes, and I've kind of got those 3 stripes in a square too. But I might have a little, there's more I can do with this. I could rotate it 90 degrees because it kind of fits in that way. And I think that might add a little more visual interest, so why not? Okay, but it's much, you know, this is much too high contrast, so again, we're just going to tint this down to like 20% using opacity to do that. Maybe even 10. It's pretty light in the background. Okay, so I think that that's kind of done. Now the only other thing here is just the margining, right? So I've just kind of used grid snapping, and it just kind of naturally keeps this margin here consistent with that, and that's kind of what we want. If I go over and look over here, I mean, I've pulled their grid apart, but it didn't look to me like they were really following any type of a grid at all, actually. So that would just be something that I would do. And as well, I don't know, there's no good reason I can see why there's more white space here. There might be for some type. Yeah, maybe. And also there's this little contact us overlay thing. You know, they've done it with a square. That seems a little inconsistent to me. Why not keep this rounded text element to say contact us as well? Because I can rescale that. So I'm just going to ungroup it. Nice and workable. Okay, so let's make sure I'm not doing that on my, that's on my type layer. Good. I want to make sure all my graphics are actually on the graphics layer. Type elements are on the type elements layer. So that's good. Let's get our next bit of copy. A healthy outside starts from the inside, Robert Ulrich, and then a handy dandy quote. Double click into the grouping to get this text. Copy. Okay, so on our type layer now we're going to put in a new text object for that. We're going to paste without formatting. And we're now going to make our H2 style, which is not 29.32. It is, oh, it is 29.32. It's just not all caps. Okay, cool. So all we need here is a character style. We don't need a new paragraph style, except for this, which is going to be okay. So all we really care about now is just a new character style that's got the salmon color. Actually, it's not. I'm not even defining anything else besides the color. So now I can use that character style to modify the body copy as well. It does sort of look like the leading is different to me though, but maybe that's just, no, it isn't. It's 32 point. It's just, that's how all cap just kind of changes it. So we're good to go there. So then our next is just lorem ipsum again, and this is just default basic copy. So we've got some spacing, obviously, that we're going to want to change, but we'll come back and do that. Right now, I'm just getting all the kind of elements from this template in place that we kind of need, and then this is, we've already got the character style we need here. So copy all this. Well, I should have pasted without formatting. It didn't look like there's any styles applied there anyway, so that's fine. So there's one thing in their setups here, which is this amount of space after that they've added, which is, let's turn on our hidden characters. So they've just used space before, 7.30 millimeters. But if we did that at the paragraph styles, it's going to make this spacing go down quite a bit. But that might not be bad. I'm gonna try. Well, no, you shouldn't do that on your body copy. You should do it as a space after on your header for consistency, because you know that if we did multiple paragraph breaks, it would put a huge paragraph space in between, like here. So I would apply that space after as space after to my heading 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my heading 1 and add space after to it. You know, in inches, that's what, 0.125, so we'll call it 0.3. That looks about right. Except for here, where it kind of divorced the quote from there. But we can override that. So this is a one case where like, okay, well I want this copy to break like that, so I kind of need this column to be this narrow, but you know, I want my body copy to go out, so that's where I would thread that text block. It's not really a column, but we do want to break it out there, but at least keep it linked because the text goes together. So that's that. There was also a white outline at the bottom here. Okay, so this becomes an object thing. Like the way that they've done it is they've just drawn in a line element, which is buried in some kind of group somewhere, so it's quite hard for me to work with. Take me a while to figure out where that white line is. Again, that's totally the wrong way to build this. Just apply a white line border to the text object, which is borders. It's been a while since I've applied borders, but I know you can apply a border to just the bottom of an object. I just got to go and find where to do that. Okay, after a little bit of a break there, I was just doing a little bit of research into how to add borders here, and it doesn't look like you can really add just a border to one side of a text object, but I'm kind of thinking around this in terms of different ways that we could do it, and I actually think we could do it with a paragraph style. You know, my basic paragraph, and then I could use rules. So you can rule above and rule below. So say I wanted a white line to always go, you know, a certain distance away from the end of this paragraph block. So let's just make a new paragraph style. I'm going to just call it underlined. And then I'm going to go down to underline options. I'm going to turn the underline on. Actually, sorry, this would be paragraph rules actually, not underline options. Let's do paragraph rules instead. So, you know, rule above or rule below, because, you know, sometimes we might want to do a call out with a line above and below. I'm just going to put a rule below, turn on rule 1, and then I'm going to offset it by, you know, 0.25 inches. That way, you know, if I kind of want to end my paragraph style with a line like that, it'll be consistent from wherever the end of the paragraph is. So that'll just kind of keep that line floating and relative to the content that's in the box. So I think that's kind of the easier way to do that. That's more flexible because this is just placeholder text in a template, so that this line can kind of move. And then I can apply that style here if I want to use it there, and it's nice and consistent, which I think would be nice. So that is how I think I would tackle an underline like that, rather than just drawing a line. We want stuff to be fluid that kind of moves with our content as we go. Okay, so our next thing that we're moving on to now here is this I'm going to revert this file because I've totally broken it. kind of on purpose, but it's more just to show why you don't build a template the way that's built. It's very, very, very difficult to work with, so we are redoing that. Why doesn't it recognize extra bold? Come on. Because it's not spelt the same, not capitalized the same way. I am Poppins, right? I don't even have that font, so I'm just gonna. Just basically replacing Poppins with Open Sans. And I'm going to save this file so I don't have to keep doing this every time I open it. There we go. Okay. So the next block of stuff that we wanted to copy over now is these little things here. Pretty basic. We're just going to put our icons over top of circles in the contact area, and then this is just going to be a basic content block. So let's copy this, go and add that in here. I don't think that the gray is an overly good choice in the way my color goes because I don't have that fade to yellow, so I'm going to change it to white. Okay, so because the spacing in here is too tight for putting those icons in place, I'm just going to override the space after here just to make it bigger, like a bullet. And I can freely put this in, but same thing as how we put this icon in place. We're just gonna place the icons from our graphic, our Adobe Illustrator graphic, but I'm going to do it in a circular ellipse frame for an object type, so it's going to allow me to kind of size that however I want, change the colors easily, and it's going to be nice and easy to work with. So go into my swatches, I'm going to make that pink, bring in the phone, Control D, background graphics, choose the white one. So in this particular case, I'm probably going to want to scale this down. Oh, not the block itself. I want to make sure we have the direct selection tool, and then we're going to take this down so that it fits like 50%. But it's just in the middle. So we've got the registration point set to the middle, nice and easy. And now we're going to leave auto fit on so that I can scale this up or down in the future. Let's make it 0.3 by 0.3. Gonna duplicate that and just switch out the icons. So select that, Control D to place it. With show import options on, then I go to the next icon, which is the @ symbol right there. Okay. Show preview, previewed image all. I don't think I selected that right because I want to replace the image. Replace selected item, I forgot to check that off. So that's what we got to do. 12. There we go. So now it's scaled it, so we don't have to resize it. So we can do that one more time with the map icon. There we go. So they all fit nicely. So we want to space these out a little bit more. I'm just going to add space after to make that work. But with grid snapping turned on, it should go down to my next grid pretty easily. So now I'm just going to kind of manually line this up. starting with the middle as it snaps. Actually, that does line up pretty well. So I think that's good enough. I think I'd like to align these things over here. Seems to me to be sort of a natural place to put a web URL here or something, but that's not content from the template, so that's fine. We'll leave it alone. Okay, so this side of the template is now 100% done. Now we're just going to go, we can go just hit W to preview it. That's actually a shortcut, in case you didn't know about that, to switch between preview mode and regular mode. It's kind of a nice little shortcut. Just helps you preview, see how things are looking. And I'm thinking that's looking decent to follow the design of the template. So now it's on to the interior spread. I believe I pretty much have all of the graphics already that I need here. We get basically a pink bar with a, sort of an S. Actually, that is one thing I didn't make. I didn't make this S curve type of thing. I don't really think it is necessary. I think the angle there is good. That's just, we could do that, and I might even go so far as to say that's reasonable to do that curve in InDesign, just because it's a basic flat shape, so there's nothing particularly wrong with that. But again, let's just get our backgrounds together here first. So I'm going to go onto my graphics layer. I'm going to lock my type, unlock graphics so I can work with it. We're just going to use this same background again. Pop it onto my guide, and it's all sized and working, so that's good. This thing, pink bar across the bottom, I'm just going to run that right across. Going to run that right across the whole bottom, just as a text block. I might not put text content in it, but for now I'm going to leave it that way. Yep. Didn't have the object selected, so let's change it to text color. So there we go. That's that. We're going to have a text block in here. So this paragraph, why choose us, and then the circle and the pill thing on the other end. So I'm just going to place the pill graphic again from the cover. But we're just going to use the top. We're going to crop it differently. We're going to use the top side of it. So direct selection tool allows us to move the graphic within the object. Now, they didn't have that circle in this bit. But I could make this quite a bit bigger. I could scale that up. I don't know if I've made this long enough, actually. Probably didn't. So if I want more of that, I'm going to just go back over to Illustrator, and I'm going to go edit that one graphic in my main Illustrator file. Make this thing longer because I've got that cropped out on the cover. It's kind of an unfortunate graphic now that I look at it. Anyway. Okay, so that's saved. So now when I go back to InDesign and update this, I should have quite a bit more space to crop out the circle from the cover and still kind of keep it in that layout. So there you go. So now we've got this kind of thing over top of that again. I mean, you can do Alt-click to update all instances of a link if you want to, but it's pretty easy to just do this. Okay, so we'll bring this in. Right. So I think that's all the it's not all the graphics I need. I need the icons for emergency. So I'm just going to use these guys here again. And that's on my type layer. So let's go unlock type. I'm going to switch these over to being filled with the blue. Just go swap out those icons while we're at it. So it's just easier to do it that way because then you're not worried about grouping together a little graphic box over top of a object box. It's just keeping it simple. So everything's linked and resized and easy to swap out. So I'm going to bring over, we're going to do this our service thing next, I guess. So we're just going to keep contact us. We're going to use that again. I think from here it's just really about copying over the text. Okay. So again, on top of, it's not really, there's no reason for two text blocks here at all. There's no reason for all these text blocks. One text block will work here, one will just work here, and then another one here. And I would think I would just thread those all together. And they're not threaded, so I can't do a copy and select all. So I'm going to go through and build my threaded text blocks first in my file, and then I'm going to cut and paste it in the copy. Okay, so I've already got this text box, so that's good. So the next one I want to thread, I've got to unlock my layer. I had that down on my graphics layer, that's right. So there we go. So now I'm just going to go through and just create empty boxes before I put type in. So I'm going to thread to here. I'll get that on the grid later, and then I'm going to thread to up here. And then my last thread is going to be here. Now there's no real rule to why I'm doing it that way. This could have easily been broken into two columns. If you looked at it as threading that way. I'm just looking at it as by panel through panel. So view extras, show text threads. You can kind of see how I've linked it. It's just kind of up, down, up, down. So pretty straightforward and simple, but now we're going to go grab our placeholder text for a template. Select all, copy that over. I'm going to paste it without formatting. And next, same thing here. Pink full quote, copy. So I'll kind of show, paste without formatting. I'll kind of use this as a bit of a demo to explain why it's handy, because you can see if I'm copying this, I got to go back and forth. I can't just select all the text all at once, whereas threaded text you can. And that is just a thing that will be useful over and over if you get in the habit of doing it. So. Guess I could use the Control-Shift-V as my shortcut, couldn't I? Okay, now why choose us and then some bullets. That's going to need a bullet paragraph style, so we'll do that next. And then finally, better doctors, better care. Let's Okay, so now I'm going to go through and just kind of break it out with using my header styles. So these are 2 paragraphs here. Oops. So then this breaks, so I'm going to insert a column break. So that's numeric pad enter, or if you don't have a numeric keypad, type insert special character, or sorry, insert break character, column break. There's a bunch of different breaks that you can use, but the most common one to use is a column break, and you can use frame breaks too. They work differently, but just I would say go through and link some text blocks together, and then just experiment with them. This one just goes to the next page, whatever linked one is on the next page. This one goes to whatever frame is next, and this one's just column within the same frame. So realistically, they work just the same if you've got threaded stuff. Okay, so that's that. Now, there is more space between these paragraphs, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is, and one of them was kind of pink, it's just a character style though, right? So I'm going to change that. And I can override this space after. At this point, there's nothing wrong with using a space after to override it, because it's just specific for this one bit of layout of content. Okay, so here I'm going to go back to my paragraph styles, and okay, so I don't have really an H2. All I've done is just modified H1 with a character style, because I'm just changing the color. Now I'm going to need a smaller font size, because this header here is not nearly as big. It's 12 point, and it doesn't even say it's a mixed font usage. Open sans, extra bold, 12 point. Okay. So there we go. That's that. Right now it just looks like basic paragraph overridden, but I'm going to say new paragraph style H2 based on H1. Okay, so I need to define that size now. That's going to be the difference. It's gone to 29 point. We're going to define the size at 12 point. And there we go. Now it's also inherited the space after rules, which we don't want. So to modify the indents and spacing, 0. Okay, so now I can go through and apply this. And I think why choose us goes up under the bullet point, so that's where we want another column break. Okay, so I'll just do this one more time. Type spirit break character, column break. That kicks that up to the next thread block. And then I can go through and just H1 or maybe H2, depends on what I think, but I think it's H2. Kind of not floating that well. And then we're going to want a bullet style, but we've got one more line break, so let's just put that in there. Column break, let's put that in there. So pretty rapidly gone through and styled that all up. There's a few missing styles left to do to get it to all work. First thing I'm going to do is just finish this little bit of layout here. Kind of would like these to line up. Apply the white character style to that. And I think this is all white too. And so is that. So I think that's all styled up. The only thing we're missing is our bullet point style. So we're going to make a set of bullets. So you can just quickly apply bullet styles and just kind of mess around with your overrides. I'm going to change the space after to kind of get them to go like that. And then if I look at this example, these bullet points are pretty large and bold, so we're going to need to make a character style for that. And these bullet points haven't even actually been properly assigned as bullets. They've just been put in as graphics, which is weak sauce. Come on, guys. You can actually define bullet styles right in your type. Okay, so we're going to make, I want to make them a little bit bolder. This is going to be a new paragraph style. So semi-bold, and then example that we're trying to recreate, this bullet here looks kind of small. These are really big. They're not properly set up as bullets, but we're going to set ours up properly. But we can easily do that. Just going to make a character style that is the same font, but a lot bigger and bolder, and then we're going to apply that to the bullet style. But first things first, let's make our paragraph style for bullets. New paragraph style, white bullets. Everything is good. We want to go down to bullets and numbering, type bullets. So we select the bullet character that we want to use, and then you choose your character style, large white bullet. Left indent and spacing, we'll probably play around with that a little bit, but I mean, just in preview, it actually doesn't look that bad. So I think that's pretty close. So that's pretty much all we need to do. So now whenever we put in bullet, every paragraph block is going to have a bullet next to it. I think the spacing could be a little better. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so that just kind of tightens those in there. So that's more like a proper bullet that lines up with each text. You don't have to go in and make a little graphic circle. You can just get a new bullet every time you hit enter. Okay, so I believe the template is now done. I don't think there's any more content over here. Yep, all the styles that we need are done. And this template is ready to work with. And you can pretty much follow that kind of set of logic for any 8.5 by 11 template. I guess I should probably fix this widow here, which I would do with tracking. Probably, maybe not. Now, it's actually one of those cases where you can't, if I'm going to keep my font size consistent, first off, I'm off grid there. Line that up. And, this is where we would use a line break. So Shift Enter. Y choose us. Kind of reads a little better. It's with a headline, it's sort of generally considered preferable to have the first word on its own versus the last, especially just because us is sort of short, but that's a little bit of a subjective thing depending on the content. But that's it. That is the full tutorial on how to build a template, how to emulate this template but do it right so that you don't drive yourself insane every time you try and use it. And everything will just kind of space out really easily if you change the text. And you won't have to be fiddling around with little lines or extra graphics or all those things. But that's what we're working towards, is stuff that is always consistent and can be easily changed without too much fuss. One little small add-on here that I have to change is that this document, because of the fold lines, actually should have a slug area included, because these fold lines might be covered up by bleeds with a full color background. So this is where a slug area, you want to have that included, so that I need to change that by going to my document setup and just adding slug. And I just added double the bleed area, so that's just 0.4 inches, and then extend those fold lines out to that. That way when I go down here, now there's an area outside the bleed that shows those fold lines, and when I ultimately send this out for print, let's call this done and ready for print. Save my file, and I go, okay, I'm going to go to press quality, just one of the defaults. Okay, save. We're going to go to marks and bleeds. We're going to turn on printer's marks, crop marks. Okay, bleed and slug, use document bleed settings. Include the slug area. We're going to go to Ink Manager, all spots to process, export. Okay, let me make sure all my links are updated. What isn't updated? Must have been some that were not fully updated, but everything still looks good. So now we're going to go and, oh, why do I see a hyphenation? Did I leave hyphenation on in my paragraph style? Nope, must just be built in. Oh, it's got a space there. All right, I just messed myself up. A little paranoid about the hyphens. Okay, so let's go and do that PDF export now. Goes pretty fast, and there we go. That is our press-ready PDF file that we're not going to have any troubles with printing. There's the score marks clearly shown. Here's those crop marks that, you know, using the publish process out of InDesign automatically adds them for you, so there's no reason to build those into your template like that rather ridiculously built Envato template had. Everything lines up on the grid. And, you know, one thing I actually noticed after is that I had set the fold wrong, but it was easy for me to move the fold because everything was fluid, so it didn't really matter. I didn't have to fiddle around with where these lines lined up or anything. I just widened out this central column, narrowed up this one so that these two panels are the same size because we need the cover to be a little bit bigger. So I had measured that wrong in my first setup. So I fixed that quickly. So this template's ready to go, and I'm going to upload it. I'm going to package it and upload it to the project folder so you guys can take a look at it, kind of see how it's built, and maybe if you feel like adapting it just to kind of work with existing styles. You kind of see how kind of easy it can be to have a template set up that you can really change the content quickly without having to do very much follow-up design work.